Hey everyone, welcome back to the Book Cave with me, Jenny. So today I'm going to be finishing some series, as you can tell by the title, and I have 3 series that I would like to finish. And 2 of them are actually inspired by another video. So I read the first book in each of these duologies together, and I just had the hold for Rebel Witch come in from my library digitally. So I'm going to read that, and that is of course the sequel to Heartless Hunter. And when I read Heartless Hunter, at the same time I read What the River Knows. So I have Where the Library Hides, and that will finish up that duology. And then the last book I have is Wisteria, the 3rd book in the Belladonna series. And obviously all 3 of these books also were on my 25 for 2025. So I'm be glad to get them off of that list as well. And yeah, I believe I'm going to start Rebel Witch first, because that is the one that will be due back the soonest. And I was actually lucky enough that my library ordered 18 copies and I was number 8, so I got one of the first batch. But that means I only have 3 weeks to read it. But I did read Heartless Hunter pretty quickly, so I am hopeful that I'll be able to read this one pretty quickly as well. But I will get to that and update you all as I get further through these books. So I'm not that far into Rebel Witch at all. I read the first chapter and I just really like the opening to part 1. It is a creation myth from the Cult of the Ancients. It says, "In the beginning there was darkness, until the 7 sisters laughed, and a world burst into being. The sisters walked its waves and carved its shorelines. They breathed life into all things and bound the world together with love, goodness, and beauty. But they couldn't stay forever. Before moving on, they chose a select few to watch over the world in their absence. To help these guardians love and protect their creation, the 7 sisters gave them a gift, the gift of magic. And then, like a flame extinguished, they vanished." So yeah, I just really enjoy when we get to see like mythology behind the world. And obviously that's speaking about the witches. And it's just really interesting to see how that was. And it's kind of really easy to see from that, too, how the witches would kind of come to take power and be like, oh, we're the best. And, like, maybe they curated that to make it seem like that. And then this is also dual POV, and both the POVs are in 3rd person, so I do like that. And I like how we do have like overlapping scenes. So again, this is just chapter 1. It takes place at a ball. And so chapter 1 is from Gideon's point of view. He's like getting ready for the ball and watching everything happen. And then he sees Rune, because he is on a mission to do with the witches. That's all I'll say there. And then she leaves the ballroom at the end of that chapter, and he follows her. So then chapter 2 is from Rune's point of view, and that opens up with her having just left the ballroom. So it's kind of interesting to see it going back and forth like that. And I believe it did do that in the first book as well, and it did add to the tension. And I do like that we kind of have a lot of political stuff going on in this chapter. You find out kind of like why Rune is at this ball and what it's meant for. And we get a new character who I have a feeling I'm not going to like him, because he's just, yeah, definitely not the best character to start with. And so, yeah, I'm definitely enjoying this. I feel like it doesn't read quite as fast as Heartless Hunter, but it is still very interesting and engaging. And I'm definitely interested to get more into it, because obviously I already have a lot of thoughts just from the first chapter, which I think is like 4 or 5 pages. And obviously I'm reading this on my phone because my library decided to not get any physical copies. They only got digital. But, you know, that's okay. I can still read it either way. But yeah, so I'm going to get back to reading and update you all when I get a little further. So I've made it to just over 100 pages in Rebel Witch, and I do have to say, so far I'm definitely enjoying this a bit more than I did Heartless Hunter. I thought Heartless Hunter was interesting, and, you know, we could definitely see different things. But, like, this one, I feel like we get a lot more of the political side. We get a lot more of the enemies part. And we also get quite a bit higher stakes, I feel like, in here, kind of like all around. Like, obviously, in the first book, the witches' lives are at stake, but in this one, it feels like everybody's, because of a certain character and what she is attempting to do, and the mystery element that has come in. I do really enjoy that. And this has been a really, really quick read. We've got short chapters. And another thing I like, this is dual POV, but they are both in third person. So that's kind of interesting. I don't really see a whole lot of that. Most dual POVs are like either both in first, or one's in first, one's in third. And it definitely, I feel like, makes it maybe a little smoother, because the scenes can kind of trade off. And, like, we do tend to switch kind of, not necessarily in the middle of scenes, but, like, when there's a transition in scene, you know, it'd be, like, at the same time. For example, in the first few chapters, there's a ball, and Rune goes off to a powder room, and Gideon follows her without her knowing. And so it ends Rune's chapter, she's in the powder room, he opens the door. And then it switches to Gideon. So I just feel like that part is done very well as well. And yeah, this reads just as fast as the first one did. And I'm definitely excited to get further into it. And I will update you all some more. And I'll try to keep it mostly spoiler-free, at least for this book. I will warn you, I will have some spoilers for, like, the beginning of Heartless Hunter. But again, I'll try to, like, keep them down for the later parts of that book. So I finished Rebel Witch, and I do have to say the last probably 50 pages had a lot of world building, had a lot of action, and yeah, I felt like they just didn't completely fit with the rest of the book. And I feel like the world building elements should have been brought in earlier and kind of incorporated more into the rest of the story. However, it wasn't bad by any means. It was just a little jarring, I felt. And yeah, so I'm done now with the Crimson Moth Heartless Hunter duology, and I'm going to start another one, or I shouldn't say another one, start another book in another series, and this will also finish the Belladonna series, and at least for what is out already. I did hear that this year there's supposed to be a holiday novella called Holly coming out in, I believe it is October or November, so I'm looking forward to that. But this will be the last full-length novel for now, and this is Wisteria, and I'm very excited to get into this and learn a little bit more about Blythe and everything. So yeah, I will start reading this and get back with you all when I have an update. So I'm 50 pages into Wisteria so far, and I have to say Blythe and Eris are pretty fun together. It's they definitely have some enemies going on there, and yeah, I do feel like Eris is a little over the top with it, although knowing what I know from book 2, I kinda understand why he's upset, and in all honesty, Blythe gives it right back, so it doesn't bother me as much as it could. Like, you know, at least he's not just being rude to her, she's giving it back. And yeah, I did like the part how she's wearing her green velvet slippers to her wedding just to make him mad. That is one of my favorite parts so far. And then the house itself so far has been an interesting character as well. And I'm probably not going to be able to say too much more just because, you know, spoilers. But yeah, that is what I'm thinking so far. Definitely enjoying it, and am excited to read more. So I'm about halfway through Wisteria now, and it continues to be fun. And one of the main reasons it's fun is the banter between Blythe and Eris. And we found out something at the end of Foxglove, which is book 2, that kind of makes this whole thing even more fun. Like, we know something about them that they don't. And just past the halfway mark, Blythe now finds out this secret. And so I'm definitely interested to see what happens when either she tells Eris or he finds out. And yeah, I'm just really excited to get further into this. I do feel like this one definitely focuses more on the relationship, whereas Belladonna and Foxglove both kind of focused on the mystery. And we still have the mystery of those two books. And when we did see Cigna, she was still researching it. And I'm kind of like really hoping that that mystery does get solved. Because, you know, it is kind of a big thing and something that is driving the whole series. But yeah, I will report back when I get further in. So I finished Wisteria, and I did enjoy it. However, I felt like there were a lot of things introduced in the second half that, while they were kind of explained and concluded, there was still a lot of questions. We did finally get the answer to the overall driving mystery. However, there wasn't an explanation to it. It was just, this is what happened. There was no explanation of why. And then we learn as well that there are a lot more people like Death and Fate. But that's it. We don't get to see any of them. At least not really. So I have very, very mixed feelings about this. I do feel like this is setting up for a companion series, which would be cool. I'd like to see more in this world. It's a very interesting world, and I feel like there's a lot added to it in this book. But yeah, that is Wisteria, and I am now going to go on to the final book in this video, which will be Where the Library Hides. And I will update you all on this one when I get a little bit into it. So I'm now on to my final book, which is Where the Library Hides. And I didn't realize when starting this video that these were actually all going to be Marriage of Convenience, as well as all being books in a series. So yeah, that was fun. And I'm up to page 80, and this one picks up right where What the River Hides, or I'm sorry, What the River Knows left off. And we get our Marriage of Convenience right at the beginning, and then we can continue to follow Inez and Wit, and the Tio Ricardo as well, and his whole group. And within this first 80 pages, we find out a lot of answers to some questions we've had since book 1. However, if you have read What the River Knows, and you read that last couple paragraphs, we don't have an answer to that yet. We do have some very, very big hints, but they're all very vague and just more about, we know that somebody else knows the truth other than just Wit. So yeah, I am definitely enjoying this one more than the first book. I still feel like there's not a whole lot of the magic in it, but because we're getting more of that intrigue, it doesn't bother me quite as much. And we are getting, I feel like, a little bit more magic in this one than in the first, although not by much. I finished Where the Library Hides, and I have to say I did really enjoy this. I wasn't able to do a whole lot of updates because from where the point that I had updated, basically everything else would have been spoilers. Like, this got really into the action and really into the mystery after that first probably about quarter or so. It got like really heavy into that. I absolutely loved all the characters, and yeah, I enjoyed the fact that the whole magic element that was in the first book came into play in this one. However, there is still one big thing that I would like to know about that. But yeah, I could definitely recommend this duology, and I would say, like, if you kind of liked book 1, then I could definitely recommend going on to this. However, if you just had absolutely no like for it at all, it just wasn't your cup of tea, this one definitely wouldn't be either. obviously because they are like in the same series, but I did feel like this one was much better. So for the 3 books I read, I do have to say Where the Library Hides is probably number 1. That was the one I enjoyed the most. And then I enjoyed Wisteria the second most. And then my least favorite was Rebel Witch. And really the reason for that is that both Where the Library Hides and Wisteria felt like they were left open for more books in the same world, just following different characters. So it didn't bother me quite as much that some things were not fully explained. Whereas Rebel Witch, that felt like it was it. I felt like there wasn't really anything left open to where there could be another series or even like a companion novella or anything like that. And so yeah, although I did feel like all 3 of these left a little bit to be desired, that was the one I felt like left the most. But that is everything I have for you today. Thank you as always for joining me here in the Book Cave. And I'd love to know, have you read any of these particular books in these series? Have you at least started any of these series? And what did you think of them? I always love to talk books with you all. Or even if you haven't read these series, what are some other series that you have read and liked? And I will see you next time in the Book Cave.